Hello and welcome into Tuesday's edition of the Arizona State Sun Devils Insider Podcast. My name is Kevin Hicks and I'm your lead beat writer for the Arizona State Sun Devils on SI. And we all know that the rearview mirror has officially been placed at the forefront of the Arizona State football season. The Sun Devils finished the regular season with an 8-4 record following a 23-7 defeat at the hands of the Arizona Wildcats in the Territorial Cup game. A win would have been very meaningful as they would have been in line to participate in the Holiday Bowl on New Year's Eve, and they would have kept the Territorial Cup in Tempe for another year. That was not in the cards, unfortunately. The hopes of a Big 12 championship game appearance would have still been alive, but Brigham Young ended up erasing a 14-0 deficit, winning 41-21 over UCF to clinch their spot. They already clinched their spot, but to potentially have an argument as an at-large threat for the Big 12 conference in the college football playoff. The debate has been whether this has been a disappointment of a season or a letdown of a season. There's been a lot of different verbiage that has been thrown around, ample amount, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I think that relative to expectations, yeah, it's a disappointment. Uh, I wouldn't say a letdown because I feel a letdown is reserved for a team such as a Penn State or a South Carolina that came into the season around the top 10 and either barely scraped by into bowl eligibility or didn't even really come that close to bowl eligibility. In South Carolina's case, I believe South Carolina finished 15th out of 16 in the SEC. So, yeah, I think that that's reserved for teams that are on even lower trajectories relative to what they were expected to do. And overall, I think you can really spin the season as a success for Arizona State, considering the number of injuries they faced, considering the leave of absence of Charlie Ragle, all these other factors. Yeah, it's a disappointment because they didn't play up to standard a lot of times, even when Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson were healthy. However, there comes a point where you have to rely on your best players, and if they're not out there, you're not going to win as many games. So I could reasonably argue, even with all the issues that the team had this season, that they probably still would have been in the battle for 10, maybe 11 wins with this team fully healthy. We saw what they could do against Texas Tech. It unfortunately didn't fall their way this season, but there's a lot of hope going into 2026, and that's the main thing that I really wanted to talk about in today's episode. The what the next weeks ahead for head coach Kenny Dillingham will look like, what the priorities will be, and how I feel about the way the roster is shaping up, really. So, obviously, first and foremost, I think that the number one focus is going to be on retaining Sam Levitt. I know Kenny Dillingham has said before that he only wants players who have no doubt in their mind that they want to be around the program, that they want to play for the program. And it kind of seems like there's a little bit of doubt there right now. However, I think that Sam Levitt, I have said this ever since I've been the host of this show. John Gambadoro, a local influential sports radio voice, has said this, that Sam Levitt is the defining player of Kenny Dillingham's tenure at Arizona State. And that's a lofty thing to be, especially when you made the playoffs in year two of the Dillingham era, and the fact that Dillingham appears to be poised to stay at Arizona State long term. I think Sam Levitt is really the player that players in the future will look at if he decides to stay as a benchmark of what kind of player Arizona State is looking for, if that makes sense. Uh, a benchmark of a player that can go one place, really not work out there, and then go to a place that's under the radar and really thrive. There's a lot of things that are riding on this, and I think that keeping Sam Levitt is very important to the program, to Kenny Dillingham. That's going to be a major priority. The other major priorities, pretty clear cut, and I'm going to discuss all of them briefly. The first priority is obviously coaching his team, preparing his team for their bowl game. They will inevitably play in one postseason game. It will probably be either the Sun Bowl or the LA Bowl. And in the Sun Bowl, they will likely face off against teams such as SMU, possibly a Wake Forest, possibly a Duke, like they did in 2014 in the 2014 season. The SMU matchup in particular would be very interesting to me since both teams made the college football playoff as a virtue of SMU being an at-large and Arizona State winning the Big 12 a year ago. They both were in position to possibly play in the conference title game once again this season. They fell short. Their seasons have been considered disappointments relative to what they were expected to do before the season. But you still have two very talented coaches in Kenny Dillingham and Rhett Lashley. You have some players on both sides looking to build momentum for next season and to cap off amazing careers for programs that are on the rise. Dillingham, regardless of who they play, is going to have his team prepared. They want to go into 2026 on a high note after losing to Arizona. There's no doubt about that. Even if some people look at non-playoff bowl games as trivial in this era, Arizona State will not. They will take this game very seriously. Um, the other thing that's going to be very high on Dillingham's list is securing the 2026 recruiting class. This recruiting class is shaping up to have the most high-end talent that any class has had under Coach Dillingham, including four-star Jake Fede, four-star tight end Hayden Verscher, Julian Hugo, who is a very, very well-liked edge rusher out of Texas. Very diverse recruiting class. Lots of gyms, lots of diamonds in the rough in this class. You just need to get those guys to sign their official commitment, their letters of intent, and secure their pledges and possibly flip some commitments as well. There's no doubt that Dillingham and the staff will be invested in that in the coming weeks. And lastly, the transfer portal. Some of Arizona State's biggest contributors over the last 3 seasons have been via the transfer portal. We know Prince Dorbah came from the University of Texas. Clayton Smith came from Oklahoma. Sam Levitt from Michigan State. Jordan Tyson from Colorado. Keyshawn Elliott from New Mexico State. Xavier Alford from USC. A lot of the players that have built this foundation came from the outside. And even though Arizona State's transfer portal class last season wasn't as robust, they still brought in Jimido Obigbo, Jesus Gomez, who was probably the most impactful transfer overall, Kendrick Breedlove, who stepped in and did an admirable job as a slot corner for the most part. Yeah, they did a good job overall, but they didn't bring in that quote-unquote flashy player. Now they have an opportunity to really target a couple of home run hitters, possibly Nick Harbor from South Carolina. There is the transfer portal window opens on January 2nd officially. We probably will know players' intentions before that, or at least a large portion of players' intentions. Could they get a Nick Harbor, who was a 5-star recruit in the class of 2023, who hasn't really worked out at South Carolina on a consistent basis? Could he look at Arizona State and Jordan Tyson and Hines Ward, ultimately decide that this is somewhere that he'd like to go? It's unlikely, but it's worth trying. They tried to get Deuce Robinson and Zachariah Branch last offseason, and they both got visits with them. They left an impression on both of them. They ultimately didn't land either of them, but the fact that they are in the running for players and talents such as that should be a very, very good sign moving forward for Kenny Dillingham. And as I said, the Sun Devils will know their bowl fate this coming Sunday, as after the conclusion of the college football playoff selection show in the hours following. Until then, stay tuned for Arizona State football coverage and men's basketball, everything else in between. I'm so grateful to be joining you once again today, and I will see you with another episode tomorrow.